Hello everyone, welcome to Mr. Chess Tactics again. This video is an example of a bishop, same color bishop endgame. As you can see here, white has a positional advantage because he doesn't have any weaknesses. Like, for example, these pawns are in opposite color of its own bishop. On the other hand, black has a big problem with his own pawn structure because of this. These pawns are in the same color as its own bishop. Okay, so the problem here for white is how to penetrate black's position. These squares are guarded by black's pawns on g6 and c6. Okay, and he only has one thing to do here, that is to play e6, sacrificing this pawn so that it could make a clearance square for the black king to jump on the e5 square. Okay, now black needs to capture this because if he doesn't, say for example he just plays bishop e8, then black's king can jump on this e5 square and black's position will be in a Zugzwang. Okay, so he needs to capture this. However, white needs not to capture the bishop on e6. Instead, he will maneuver his bishop to c2 in order to create an attack here, threatening bishop g6. If and after bishop g6, h6, g6, then this pawn will march through the e8 square. Okay. Now black needs to defend that, and that is bishop f7. So now we need to create a double weaknesses, or we need to apply the principles of two weaknesses in the endgame. So in the endgame, it is very important to uh, divide your opponent's defense, and these pawns are already weak. They are on white's bishop's target. Alright, so white needs to play bishop e4, threatening to capture this c6 while eyeing this g6 square. Okay, so black needs to play bishop e8. Now the white king can now jump to e5. So now we are gradually putting black's position into Zugzwang. Alright, so now white cannot play bishop f7 because of bishop c6, and the queenside pawns will fall. Alright, if black plays bishop d7, then this pawn will be on target. Alright, so he cannot capture this because of these. This pawn would go to e8 h8 square. Alright, so the only move here for black is king f7 or king d7. Alright, if he plays king f7, then we'll have king d6. If king d7, then we'll have king f6, and then this black king will harvest the pawn on h7 and g6. Okay, so in this bishop, same colored bishop ending, especially in the end game, generally there are some principles that could be applied, positional principles that could be applied. So what are those? First is the principle of two weaknesses. Okay, black has two weaknesses. These are the g6 pawn and the c6 pawn, and they are on target by white squared bishop. So we need to divide, we need to overload black's defense by creating two weaknesses. Alright, so secondly is the square clearance. Black has an extra pawn, but he cannot penetrate with his king because these squares are guarded and this square is blocked by its own pawn. So the only way to penetrate through black's position is to sacrifice his pawn so that we could create a square for the white king. So after bishop e6, then we can play bishop c2, attacking this pawn on g6, and after bishop f7, then we'll have bishop e4, bishop e8, and then king e5. Okay, and the third is the principle of Zugzwang. All right, so by applying these two first two principles, we could slowly outmaneuver black's position. Okay, so as we can see here, black is really in a great Zugzwang. Okay, um, let's jump into the next game. Okay, so we're on the second scenario. White is trying to promote his pawn to f8. However, black is defending the f7 square. Alright, and this game is a draw. Why? Because white cannot make any progress because if he pushes his pawn to f7, then black can easily capture it. All right. So if he plays, like for example, bishop e2, black can simply play bishop g6. If bishop d3, then he can go back to the h7, the h5 square. So if black plays bishop f7, he can just simply play bishop d1, e2, f3, or g4, whichever he wants. Okay, say for example, bishop e2. If white plays bishop g6, then he could play bishop c4, still eyeing this f7 square. All right. If bishop e8, still bishop c4. Okay. If bishop g8, then we can play back. We can go back to h5. All right. So let's jump to the third scenario. Okay, so we're here on the third scenario, which is almost exactly the same as the second scenario. As we can see here, black is attacking this pawn on b7, while this dark squared bishop is defending this important b8 square. But this position is winnable for white. How? So white needs to play bishop h4. Okay. So the goal here for white is to put his dark squared bishop on this b8 square. Okay, so for example, black plays king b6. He needs to guard this a7 square. However, white cannot be prevented. He can still play bishop f2 check. Then black will play king a6, bishop c5. Okay, so just needs to triangulate the position. Okay, so it needs to outmaneuver black here. Okay, so black needs to play bishop f4. Then white needs to go back to e7. Maneuvering is dark squared bishop to d8 and then to f7. So uh, black needs to prevent that by playing king b5 or king b6, whichever. If king b5, then white can play bishop d8. Then black can play king c6. So black needs to play bishop g5. Okay, of course, black cannot capture this g5 bishop. because it would allow this pawn to promote to the b8 square. Alright, so it just needs to go back, like say for example bishop h2, then now white can play the important bishop e3, intending to play bishop a7. Okay, so there's no way for black to defend here, but to play bishop d6, and after bishop d6, white can play bishop a7. Alright, if bishop g3, then now the important bishop b8. So black needs to play bishop f2, and after bishop f2, white can play bishop h2, vacating this b8 square for white's pawn to promote. Okay, so black needs to play bishop a7, then white can play bishop g1. Okay, so there's no way for black now to prevent this pawn promotion to the b8 square. Alright, in this scenario, we have learned another principle that we can use in the endgame, generally in the endgame, and that is the triangulation. Alright, as you can see here, white is using his own bishop to make a triangulation, outmaneuvering his opponent in order for him to promote his pawn to uh, the b8 square. I hope you have learned something from this video, and thank you so much for watching, guys. You have a nice chess day.